Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We have a loaded show today. Yesterday was the NBA trade deadline, and it was a really exciting and active one. So we're not going to bandy about. We're going to get just right into it and talk about all the trades. We're going to start with the biggest one of the day, one that we've been talking about for weeks now, and it finally came to fruition, Sap. The 76ers and the Nets pull off a mega trade that we rarely see happen on the trade deadline. James Harden goes to the Philadelphia 76ers, and Ben Simmons goes to the Brooklyn Nets. Also heading to the Nets is Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a 2022 first-round pick, a 2027 first-round pick, protected 1 through 8. And the 76ers also got Paul Millsap, who I don't know if he's even still living and breathing, but they got him too. Sap, first question is, are you surprised this went down? Second question is, what does it do for both these teams?
I'm not surprised at all, Jet, because this is the NBA and teams will make bold moves, especially in the Eastern Conference this year, where it looks like you could make a case that 7 or 8 teams are in contention for this. Now, obviously, they're ranked differently, but Miami's probably been the most consistent team in the conference this year. You still have Milwaukee, the defending champs. So those two teams are going to be in contention. Philly and Brooklyn, we kind of put them a little bit on the back burner because of the Durant injury in Brooklyn, and also with Kyrie only playing road games recently. They were in kind of a free-for-all, and then Harden wanted to get out of there the last couple of weeks, and they made it happen with Philadelphia. Philadelphia has been playing good basketball. Joel Embiid, to me, is the MVP of the league as of right now. So you have those 4 teams. And then you've got a whole other group of teams like Cleveland and Chicago that have overperformed this year. Charlotte's played good basketball. The Celtics are hot at the moment. Then you can also look at Toronto, which we both agree is one of the best organizations in the NBA. They just constantly draft and develop players and are always in there fighting. And then you've got Atlanta got on a hot streak. So the East is so deep that I think these two teams said, well, we've got to strike right now to try to become the best team in the East. And if you're Philadelphia, you traded away a player who's not played this year, who no longer wanted to play for you, and you got a top 10 player in James Harden, who hasn't necessarily been a top 10 player this year. Some injuries, appears to be disengaged in Brooklyn. But I really think that Harden and Embiid, that could work spectacularly and maybe put the Philadelphia 76ers as the team to beat in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's a fascinating trade because of all the personalities involved with it too, because it's not just the personalities that are being changed hands, it's the personalities then that they have to go and play with. Ben Simmons now has to fit in with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Joel Embiid's a big personality. James Harden hasn't always, in fact, he's basically never gotten along with all-star level teammates. And frankly, Embiid is the guy in Philadelphia. So, that's a different sort of role for James Harden to have to take on. So I'm really interested to see how it plays out for both teams. And I think, Sap, the more we talked about this trade potential happening, the more and more it seemed like it almost had to happen because of the season Embiid's having. I don't think that Daryl Morey and the ownership of the Philadelphia Sixers could sell that to their fan bases. Oh, we're just going to punt on this season and wait until we get a maximum return for Ben Simmons. They had to move now. Fortunately for them, James Harden did what he, does and became disgruntled and disinterested and essentially forced his way out of his second team in about a calendar year, which is somewhat incredible. So it worked out for them in terms of they got a player that they coveted for a player who wasn't playing for them. But I think regardless of if Harden was or wasn't, if Harden wasn't going to be available, I still feel like they had to move Ben Simmons for something because of how well Embiid is playing this year. And as far as the Nets are concerned, everything I've read, it became abundantly clear that James Harden was just checked out, not happy, causing chemistry issues. I was reading an article today about how him and Kyrie Irving didn't get along, and he was looking at Kyrie Irving when he was saging the locker room like he was some sort of alien creature. Like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? What did I get myself into? So, there's a lot of personalities going on with this, but I think that, the really interesting thing is that if it works out, it should make both these teams better, which is not often the case in a trade.
No, because Ben Simmons is such a unique player, right? And I think he's going to fit in with Brooklyn. He's not going to have to score. You've got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in road games can handle that. Now you add Seth Curry, who's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. You got to see when Joe Harris.
That was under the radar sneaky pickup by the Nets.
Absolutely,
adding Seth Curry.
Perfect guy. I mean, he's a disaster on the defensive end, but Ben Simmons can cover a lot of defensive problems for that team. He's that good defensively. I mean, he could be their Draymond Green, right? The guy who's an excellent passer, rebounder, defender, not necessarily a scorer. And then you got Durant and Kyrie to take care of a lot of that. Now, the thing I read into this is, as much as we think that Durant's frustrated with Kyrie Irving, it appears that Durant's more frustrated with Harden, and that's why Harden wanted out. I think the bond between Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant is unbreakable. I just think that Kevin Durant looks at Kyrie Irving as like the Maharishi Yogi.
Yeah, it's called Stockholm Syndrome, Sap.
It really is. I think he just looks at him and says, this is the guy. Like, I believe whatever Kyrie is selling, even the fact that he's only playing road games. So at that point, three never work well. Like, you don't like to go out to dinner with three because two start to talk about a subject and the third person gets left out. That happens with me often, Jet, because sometimes I'll go out with two other friends and they start talking about something that they have in common, like, I don't know, driving or their cars.
You're the third wheel often?
Well,
that's what you're saying?
Oftentimes when it comes to something like that, like, as I don't drive, I don't have a car. So if they're talking about, I'm looking for new wheels and traffic was bad, it's like a foreign conversation to me. Or two friends are talking about, country and Western music. I don't know. So I'm kind of left out of that, and then I always try to bring it back to Seinfeld, because that will always kind of lure at least one friend back in. And now I've got control of the conversation. But
the great uniter of people, Seinfeld,
without question. So, but when you have three, and we always talk about the big threes, invariably it's like 2 against 1. We kind of saw that with the Celtics, right? With Pierce and Garnett.
There's always an odd man out, always.
Ray Allen was the odd man out. I think when the Heat had the big three, it was probably Chris Bosh. But that was as much to do with like power ranking the players. LeBron was clearly the best player. Wade the second.
Yeah, but look how close Wade and LeBron they even still are.
Right. So. And Bosh always felt like the odd man out in that situation. So I think in terms of Brooklyn, it's KD, Kyrie, and then the third person is going to have to kind of fend on their own, and that was Harden, who I thought played really well last year. The driving force of that team last year, but this year not so much, whether it was the injury, being out of shape, being disgruntled, didn't like paying 14% state income tax, where you just came from Texas where there's no state income tax. I mean, maybe that's weighing on him. He's due for a huge contract at the end of this season. I think he's going to get in shape, play well. As Charles Barkley said last night when they were drafting the All-Star teams, Harden will be fine now he got traded. Once you get traded, all of a sudden you get healthy, in shape, and it won't take him long to connect with Joel Embiid, because I think that is going to be a lethal combination. Because say whatever you want about James Harden, he's one of the few players I've ever seen that can be an elite scorer and an elite distributor all in the same time. And there's just not a lot of guys that fit that bill.
Yeah, I think Barkley was dead on, and I'm pretty sure it's everybody knows it's like the worst kept secret that Harden wasn't actually hurt. He's just didn't want to be there, and right. So Barkley said they asked if he's still hurt, and he said he's traded, he'll be fine. Right. But I think the more interesting situation is Ben Simmons' timeline, because he's now gone. He's for the whole season gone with the I'm not mentally ready to play. You need to worry about my mental health. My mental health is a big thing. And if suddenly he's playing in a game next week, he looks like a real a-hole, Sap. This is a dangerous game he's played, because he's pulled the mental health card, and there's been a sort of a revolution in not just sports, but society, with how people look at mental health as, a legitimate reason to not be able to play, or it's just as legitimate as an injury. And if he was using it as an excuse just to get out of Philadelphia, I think there could be some even more major backlash on Ben Simmons. So the timing of when he plays for the Nets, I think, is going to be crucial in terms of how he starts to get confidence in himself and get the fans on his side at all.
Yeah, because the All-Star game is a week away, and then we only have about 7 weeks left in the season, essentially a third of the season left, probably in shape, but then you're going to have to get in basketball shape. But is he mentally ready to play? And right, if he was just using that excuse not to play for the 76ers and all of a sudden comes back and says, I can't wait to get back on the court, it does not look good for Ben Simmons. But again, he's such an elite player, such a unique player, that all will be forgiven in terms of the Brooklyn Nets because now they get their player that they traded James Harden for, and that could be a really good fit. The only problem with Brooklyn is they don't really have a leadership structure there. As great as Kevin Durant is, and he is phenomenal, he's not really a leader. Kyrie's not a leader. Ben Simmons is not a leader.
He thinks he is.
Well, Kyrie thinks he's, again, the smartest man in the NBA and maybe the smartest person on the flat earth. But yeah, there's really no leader there. Now it's going to fall on Steve Nash, who's a second-year head coach, great player, but we don't know what he is as a coach right now. So that's going to be interesting to see. If it works on the court, it could be lethal though, right, Jet? Because Durant and Kyrie, we know they play well together. And then Simmons does all of that other stuff that a lot of players don't want to do. He does it at a very high level, defend, rebound, pass. I think he'll score some points down low. He could be in the dunker position. He's going to get some sweet passes from Durant and Kyrie Irving. You get Joe Harris back to help your perimeter game. As we said earlier, Seth Curry, Patty Mills has been outstanding with Brooklyn this year. I mean, they got better too because Harden didn't want to be there. Simmons didn't want to be in Philadelphia. Exchange the two of them, and I think both teams will invariably get better. But again, there's only a third of the season left, and it's going to take time for those guys to ramp up. Right.
Well, I mean, Sap, you were talking about a potential Ben Simmons to Brooklyn trade in the offseason because of the Kyrie, but you were saying Kyrie at first because that made the most sense. It was trading a pain in the ass for pain in the ass, except for suddenly James Harden became the bigger pain in the ass for the Nets. So, we were talking about Ben Simmons' fit on Brooklyn for a while now. And I think what we said then, I think you would agree now, Sap, is that it's the perfect type of situation for him because a situation for Ben Simmons that maximizes his abilities is playing with two other primary scorers where he's the third option, not the second option, which is what he was in Philadelphia. He's not going to have a big scoring burden on Brooklyn, when Kyrie, decides to play. So I think that's a great situation for them. And obviously their weakness was defense. He's a tremendous defender. Last year, I thought he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. And so he brings that to them too. So I think in terms of fit, I think it's great. I just, again, the personalities are combustible because you got Durant, who's, seemingly never really happy, Kyrie, who's crazy, and then Ben Simmons, who's extremely sensitive. And I know the Nets fans aren't, super passionate and there's not a ton of them, but you're still going to be dealing with a major media market and a lot of eyeballs on you. So, how's Ben Simmons going to react to that? If he has a similar play in the playoffs, if the Nets get there, they've lost 10 in a row right now. If he has a similar play in the playoffs this year as he did last year with Philadelphia, I mean, the microscope's just going to get even bigger on him.
Yeah. I mean, you went from Philadelphia to New York. I mean, that's two intense markets. And I know even though the Nets are the best team in New York, the Knicks are still the number one team in New York. It just has that feel. But
they have way more fans. I mean,
way more fans. But in terms of the national spotlight, and that's what you really deal with more than anything. It's not like the old days where, the local columnist would rattle the cages with an intense column. I mean, that's not the way it works anymore. Talk radio is more national as it is local. I mean, because you can just access anyone you want. So there's that part of it as well. I think Simmons will be the spokesperson of that team is. I mean, we see that with the Lakers who are just in a tailspin themselves. At least LeBron will go to the press conference and answer the questions. I mean, you have that with him. Or if Golden State's in a bit of a free for all, doesn't happen very often. Steph Curry's the guy that can handle that.
Yeah, it's a shield, basically, right?
It's a shield, yeah. And I think Giannis does that with Milwaukee. And here's a man that doesn't have complete command of the language. I think he does a great job with it. But, Giannis will get up there and say, we're not playing well and I've got to play better and we've got to play better on defense, that type of thing. Durant, to me, looks like a guy that almost has this aloof attitude.
He doesn't even like Ernie Johnson.
That's impossible. Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the draft. Everyone was cracking up laughing, and Kevin Durant, unless he's got the driest sense of humor since I don't know who, everybody else was kind of laughing and having a great time. And there's Durant. Yeah, doesn't like Ernie Johnson, doesn't like Barkley. I think he likes Charles. I think he likes Shaq. Because who the hell? If you're not going to like Shaq, he may break you in two the next time he sees you if he feels like it.
Except Ernie asked him about hey, how you feeling and what's going on with your injury? You want to give us an update? And he just said, nope.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's just
to
That's
Ernie
him.
Johnson, who
Yeah.
everybody loves.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Durant is the biggest prick in the league, right? I mean, I think we can agree with that. I mean, Westbrook is irascible, but I think Westbrook it's more emotional and his frustration that it hasn't worked in
He's
LA.
also sort of delusional. So at this point,
Westbrook, oh
yeah,
man, he's the aging Hollywood star who thinks that, she should still be, on top of the marquee. It's like Sunset Boulevard for
yeah.
all we yeah, he's delusional.
But no, I think you make a good point about who answers the questions.
Yeah, who is it? It's not Kyrie because he's only at the away games. He's not at the home games. And Ben Simmons, I honestly don't even know what Ben Simmons sounds like. I mean, he's like the least quoted athlete, major star in the NBA that I've ever heard. I mean, we know Jason
Sapp. I mean, he ducked all of his post game responsibilities after the playoffs last year.
Not exactly. I mean, I know it's easy to pile on James Harden, but he seemed to be a guy that after games answered questions. But not all, again, another delusional guy, which, by the way, Jet, most of the league is delusional, which I want to ask you this. When we see all of this and two marquee teams and two great players and who doesn't want to play in Brooklyn and who doesn't want to play in Philadelphia and this, that, and the other thing, is this hurting the league that maybe some fans get turned off by, I love basketball and, the level of talent is greater than ever, but man, if I'm a fan of a team, it's like the fans care more about the team than the players. Is that a negative thing for the league? I know the stories are fascinating, but how can it be good for the league when you have star players that essentially shut down until they get their way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder if what's happening is younger people even younger than me, Sapp, are becoming more fans of the sport and the players and less fans of the team. I don't know if I kind of get the sense that that's what's happening with social media, and you follow your favorite player and you follow them on Instagram and TikTok and whatever. And if they're becoming more attached to the players than the laundry or the team, and that's sort of the direction it's going. I'm not saying that with any sort of expertise or knowledge, but if that's the direction that it's going, then this is good for the league because it creates more drama and more interesting characters. But sort of the traditional people like me and well, I guess you just like LeBron, but typically people your age, Sapp, and my age, root for the laundry. They root for their city's team. I don't know that I can't say with certainty that that's changing, but I kind of getting the sense that is what's happening. So I think to answer your question for older fans or even millennial fans, it might be it's a turnoff, but for the Gen Zers, I think it's just what they know and understand and they like about the sport. So, it's going to be interesting to see how the next 10, 15 years play out in terms of what fan bases look like. Are they going to be more fans of teams or is it going to be more fans of players?
That's a great point, Jed. I think you nailed it, to be honest with you, because you look at it and now we're so connected with social media. You can have League Pass, TNT and ESPN have a slew of games. You can watch your favorite player. You can follow your own favorite player through Twitter, whatever it is. And so you can follow that player to wherever team he goes to. There's so much movement in the league. You don't see that in the NFL. Maybe you're seeing a little bit with the quarterbacks now that, Brady went to Tampa for 2 years and maybe Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson will play somewhere else next year. So there's a little bit more movement in the NFL, but I've always felt that the NFL and the NBA are national sports, right? Like you could be a Packers fan in Massachusetts and you can go to a bar in South Boston and go to a Packers bar and watch all those games. And there's plenty of bars available for different teams in the Boston market. Basketball, again, with League Pass and so many different ways that you can connect is great. I've always felt baseball and hockey is a regional sport. Like you're like a Red Sox fan, right? Or you're a Bruins fan. So you just follow the team, you get Nesson, you maybe go to the game once or twice a year, and that's your team. You maybe follow the league somewhat, but you don't have a favorite player playing in Edmonton or playing for the White Sox. It's just not the way it works. I was different because, Barry Bonds was my guy. So where he was playing, that was my team. Hockey, as a young guy, I was a big Bruins fan because of Bobby Orr. And then as I got older, I just appreciated Mario Lemieux. So I rooted for him. But I think that's a great point, Jet, that now, especially with people your age and younger, it's more about, that's my guy. Russell Westbrook's my guy. I wear his sneakers. I love him. He's on the Lakers now. So I'm going to root for the Lakers.
Yeah, the closest thing I could compare it to, if I am right, and I'm not saying with any certainty that I am, I'm kind of reading the tea leaves and seeing where I think it's going, is that back in the day, before even Sap, you were born, movies I'm going to see the
Yeah.
newest MGM movie. I'm going to
Yep.
see the newest Fox movie, or not Fox, Disney movie or whatever. And studios were the reason that you saw a movie. And then it became, I'm going to see the newest Tom Hanks movie. I'm going, you're following the actor as opposed to the studio. That's the closest thing I can kind of compare it to. If it's taking, does that make sense to you at all, Sap?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all star driven. I mean, LeBron's the biggest star, and then I would say Steph Curry's the next biggest star. KD's a huge star, but again, he's just not that he's not likable, he's just not approachable. LeBron is larger than life, and Steph is warm and cuddly, and Durant's uber talented, but he's not like the guy that you can put your arms around, right, and give a big hug. Absolutely. It's about the star players, and now Giannis is becoming a star, which is great, and I think he's so likable. Because he didn't come through the AAU system. We know his background. He was a mid-first round pick. He worked his ass off, and now he's the best player in basketball, and he's the reigning champ. So I think those are all very, very valid points. And staying even close to the whole idea of movies is the movies that the Marvel movies or whatever group of movies that people see now. They've got to go out and see the 16 different versions of it, whatever.
I'm feeling attacked, Sap.
No, that's not. Look, I haven't been to a movie. I've been to the movie theater twice in the last 3.5 years till I get these freaking eyes fixed. I saw, actually, I've been to the movies once in the last 3 years, and I saw Space Jam with LeBron James. It was pretty good.
Good pick. Good pick
of all the movies to go see over the last 3 years. I went to see LeBron, but we took my niece, who she gave a lukewarm thumbs up, but she liked the Jordan one better. So we're not on speaking terms at this point. She's only 5.5. I think she did that on purpose. She knew that was going to irritate me. She knows how much I love LeBron, so she's just playing around with her uncle. But but I get the whole point. Like the big serials or whatever you call them, that's what you go see. And you're committed to that, right? So like, I think that's what you kind of see with the NBA, because the NBA does a great job of marketing itself, probably better than any other sport, because the stars are so important. And again, the sneaker deals are so important. Like, do you even know what cleats Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers wears? And are you going to go out? You're not buying cleats.
I know Tom Brady wears Under Armour. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers does.
He wears Adidas. So, like, are we going to go out and buy Adidas or Under Armour sneakers?
Well, no, because that's the great thing about basketball shoes, right? Is they're everyday shoes you can just wear.
Exactly.
Cleats, you'll be tripping all over yourself.
Even baseball.
They're specific.
They're specifically basketball. Oh, I really like these sneakers that LeBron wears. Or my nephew is 47, and he's like, tried and true Nike guy. Like, he will wear nothing but Nikes, and he'll get like the latest, $175 sneakers. That's what he likes. And so that just think of that throughout the entire world, not just this country, and how much money is created through sneakers. So that's where basketball, I think, has it over so many sports. And look, they're playing in a tank top and shorts. They're the most visible athletes on the planet. I mean, more than half the players in the NFL, if they walked in to a restaurant, you'd look and say, yeah, that guy looks like a football player. He's a big dude, but who is it? Unless it was Brady or Rodgers or, those great players like that. Oh, yeah, that's right. He's the guard for the Rams. What's his name again? He's playing in the Super Bowl. I don't even know who it is. So we're basketball. You kind of know the eighth guy, the third guy sitting on the bench. I mean, Scalabrine, for the most part in his career. And look, Scalabrine's a talented basketball player. To make it in that league for 10, 12 years and have a career like he had, a talented guy, but he was the 9th or 10th guy, but he was able to parlay that into a pretty good career now in broadcasting. So because he's visible. Whereas in football, I mean, you'll see, like Pat McAfee was a punter who became a huge personality now as a podcaster, earns him $30 million a year. God bless him. But you don't see that as much in football. It's usually the bigger stars that make it as broadcasters.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's true. Pat McAfee's sort of the exception to the rule. But Sep, jumping back into the trade deadline, let's just kind of blow through these and then we'll talk about the Celtics one. Just going to get your thoughts, because there were also some that happened before the trade deadline. So just sort of brief thoughts on that. Karis LeVert went to Cleveland for a first-round pick and Ricky Rubio's expiring contract. He's out for the season. Does that help Cleveland?
Yeah, Karis LeVert's a good player. You've got Jared Allen, who's a borderline all-star. Evan Mobley probably going to be rookie of the year. Darius Garland made the all-star team and doing this all without Colin Sexton this year. That's a nice move for them. And again, Cleveland's in that spot where, maybe they end up the 4 or the 5 seed. Can they surprise and win around? Perhaps. I think the Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be incredible. Really. I mean,
good for them for going for it, I think, for Cleveland. Why not?
Other than LeBron James for 11 years, they've been irrelevant for your lifetime, pretty much, right? I mean, they had some good run in the early 90s. They beat the Celtics.
They're the last team that needs, the 20th overall pick in the NBA draft. That's what they gave up. They don't need that.
Exactly. And you know what? Maybe they're setting things up for LeBron to return there. I doubt it, but you never know.
You never know. Yeah, I guess it is a better roster than the Lakers. That's
sure is. Russell Westbrook is not on the Cavaliers, thus it's a better roster for the Lakers.
CJ McCollum finally left Portland after a long time being talked about in trade rumors. He goes to the Pelicans. The Blazers get back Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who they quickly flipped. Somebody named Didi Luzada, who I don't know, a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. What's the thought process here for the Pelicans?
I wasn't sure if the Pelicans were going to be in a sell mode because they're about 5 games outside of the play-in tournament. So I don't expect them to jump into that, especially if Zion never plays this year. But getting CJ McCollum, nice move, right? I mean, there's a guy who's never been an all-star, but he's almost an all-star. You know what I'm saying? A very good player who's had a nice career in Portland. I was surprised that the Pelicans went in and added a player of that caliber.
If Zion comes back, and I'll lay it out on the table right now, I don't think he's going to play this season, but if he does, Ingram, Zion, and McCollum is a pretty potent big three.
Yeah,
it's good in that, McCollum is used to being the second option. He's suddenly the third option, which makes him even more dangerous. I like that team. I like Valanciunas. Is Valanciunas still on that team, or is he on Memphis? Steven Adams might be on I forget. I think it's Steven Adams. Regardless, Sap, I like that as a big three. If Williamson comes back and they make the playoffs, they could be interesting.
Yeah, because Zion is that good. But I think now with only 2 months left in the season, why rush him back, get him right for next year? And, maybe they're just trying to add pieces to appeal to Zion so he signs that extension.
I think that could be it right there, Sap. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Hey, we went out and got CJ McCollum. Brandon Ingram's a borderline all-star. Maybe they get lucky in the lottery, get a draft pick, and you go from there. And now you're on your way because you can turn things around pretty quickly. Look at Memphis. You had a player like John Morant. The next thing you know, you have the 3rd best record in basketball.
Well, I mean, if the rumors are true and Zion really is dead set on going to the Knicks, I mean, look at those 2 rosters. I'd rather be in the Pelicans roster, and the Knicks. Sure. I mean, you got Julius Randle punching computers and giving thumbs down to the crowd, and it's kind of turned quickly in New York, as many predicted it would.
Yeah, we both did. I didn't think they would qualify for the playoffs because a good coach, but he wears thin on people. I mean, that style of play is exhausting, and you just can't do that night in and night out in the NBA at this point.
Yep. A shocking trade right before the deadline, a couple days before the deadline, Sap, was the Pacers and the Kings completing a deal that sent Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson to Indiana. And the Kings got back Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 2nd-round draft pick. We knew Sabonis was in trade rumors, Sap, but we did not know Halliburton was going to be on the move. And a lot of people prefer Halliburton in that now former Kings backcourt of Halliburton and Fox. Were you surprised that the Kings traded a young piece for a good player in Sabonis, but
a good player in Sabonis, right?
I'm not sure the Kings are the most directionless franchise in sports.
They haven't made the playoffs in almost 15 years. So
15.
They're just never there. And why would you trade someone who's still in his rookie deal and has proven that he's a really good player? Maybe you get more for De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if that backcourt could work together, but there's different ways to work these things out. I mean, if you've got a backcourt with 96 minutes allotted, you can kind of work things out. I mean, that they don't have to be on the court together all that much. But they decided to move on. Sabonis is a guy who puts up numbers, but I don't know if it relates to winning. So that was a pretty sizable trade, between two teams that really are not going anywhere. So maybe they're just trying to shake things up and improve themselves for next year.
Yeah, I think it was smart for Indiana. They get a guy on a cheap deal who could become, a really, really good player for them. And they knew they were kind of going nowhere. I'm a little surprised that they didn't also move Miles Turner and just restart the whole thing. Maybe they do that in the offseason. But I think they did well. The King again. I like Sabonis a lot. I think he's a good player. But the Kings giving up a guy who's on a good contract for, Sabonis, thinking Sabonis is going to get to them to the playoffs. He's not. I mean, they're not going to, he's not going to improve their winning margin by a game.
No, I mean, they're too far out of the play-in at this point. They're behind New Orleans.
So I don't know what the point of it was for them, but you're talking about a team that's missed for 15 years in a row. So
is it a case sometimes where an organization like that just makes a trade for the sake of making a trade to show the fans that they're doing something?
I don't think it's to show the fans. I think their owner's crazy, and that's what that's what makes him happy.
That's true. Yeah, that is true about that. So it's just an organization that's been irrelevant for a decade and a half. It's too bad because 20 years ago they were pretty darn good when they had Weber, and a bunch of other players that made it to the conference finals a couple of times and went to Game 7, lost in overtime to the Lakers. I mean, that was a good team.
Yeah, it's a miserable. You're living in Sacramento, which isn't got the most going on, and you're terrible. That's just not an appealing situation for anybody.
And you're paying a 14% state income tax. Although
brutal.
Maybe I overblow that, but then you're living in Sacramento. If you're living in LA or San Francisco and paying that tax, that's not bad.
Yeah. No, I've been to Sacramento. There is not a whole lot going on there. A minor trade that could be interesting and have some very big implications in the playoff Sap. The Bucks got Serge Ibaka from the Clippers. There was a bunch of mechanisms going on. You don't need to know all the players. The Pistons got Marvin Bagley, who I think is going to be an interesting look for the Pistons. But the key thing to focus on here is Ibaka goes to the Bucks. They get rid of DiVincenzo. Is Ibaka a good fit on the defending champions?
Yeah, because Lopez has missed most of this year, right? So they need some size there to take a little pressure off of Giannis. So, I mean, you're asking Giannis to be your primary scorer, rebounder, playmaker, and defender. And you know what? He's pretty good at all four of those. That's why he's the best player in the sport right now. And I don't even think it's a debate who the best player in basketball is. And look, I love LeBron, and I think Durant is a joy to watch, Curry, and all these other guys. There's no question in my mind that right now that Giannis is the best player in basketball. I mean, obviously because of all those guys, he's better at the defensive end. And oh, by the way, he's as efficient a scorer as any of those players. He's a monster rebounder. And now he's added playmaking into his game and the leadership part of it too, right? So I think he's the best player in the sport, but maybe take a little pressure off him so he doesn't have to do everything. So Ibaka's a veteran, I mean, he was on a championship team in Toronto a couple of years ago. You manage his minutes and he'll give you some quality play.
Yeah, I think that, I like DiVincenzo, and I think that he's a decent player, but the Bucks don't really need him. They won the championship, in fact, without him last year because he missed the playoffs. And Ibaka, like you said, is a veteran who's won a title, so knows what that's about. He's not the shot blocker or the 3-point shooter that he once was, but he can play some solid minutes. Maybe you saw the dividends that PJ Tucker played for them last year.
Exactly.
And I don't think he can give you quite as much, but he can give you 70% of that, which I think is helpful.
Yep. Yeah, it's wasting fouls. If you're playing Philadelphia in the second round of the playoffs, he can go out there and give you 5 fouls, 6 fouls against Joel Embiid. The problem with that is Embiid's a great free throw shooter, so it's not like you're putting him at the line and he's going to miss a lot of shots. Embiid's an 84% free throw shooter, which is just absolutely amazing. And a lot of this is locked in for the Bucks this year because Bobby Portis, I mean, I think he could be in contention for most improved player, which is saying a lot because he's always been a darn good player. He just seems to get better every game, hits big shots, always does the right thing.
Next to Giannis, he's the second most popular player on the team. The fans love Bobby Portis.
Well, I mean, how many guys do you see that are that big or like effort guys? Like usually the effort guys are, 6'2", 6'3", and they're crashing into the stands to save a ball.
I think he just feeds off the crowd, Sap. I mean, he just seems like some players have to find their home.
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
the type of crowd and type of team. And, he bounced around from a couple teams and he's found his home, and he took a sweetheart deal for the Bucks to stay there this offseason because he's comfortable playing there.
Yeah, no, he loves it. I mean, it's a Midwestern crowd. They're really passionate, and he does what he has to do. But the energy that he plays with is phenomenal. He was big in that postseason last year,
Huge.
and so far this year, even better. Like he's been even better this time around. He's been a key component for that team.
No, they're going to be a real bear to get out in the playoffs now because they've done it. And they have a lot of veterans on that team.
Yep.
A lot of veterans. So, yeah, I think that was a shrewd move. They don't need DiVincenzo. He's still kind of a work in progress. He's got potential, but they're in total win now mode. So, add the veteran in Ibaka. Why not? Just a couple more trades, and then we'll talk about the Celtics one. The Hornets added Montrezl Harrell, who you're familiar with from LeBron last year on the Lakers. I think that's a pretty good move for the Hornets, who are trying to just continuously improve and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, they need some energy. They need some ability to rebound. And I think that Montrezl Harrell will do that for Charlotte. I like watching that Charlotte team. I love
he's had a good year too.
Yeah. I mean, and he's had a good year. Yeah, he's had a better year this year with the Wizards than he did with the Lakers. Didn't seem to work out with the Lakers. And I thought that was a pretty interesting move when the Lakers signed him after winning the championship. But yeah, another energy guy that you need. And Charlotte needs a little bit of, like physical intimidation, that type of thing that he will bring to the table, because they're kind of a small team. When you get
he's a great rebounder. So
excellent rebounder. So yeah, nice little move that Charlotte made. Is again, I think once all these Eastern teams started making moves, every other team in the East decided, well, we've got to kind of do something to improve, because the Eastern playoffs are going to be awesome. Once we get through that play-in tournament, I mean, you could have the Celtics, who are playing really good basketball, playing the Heat in the first round, and that to me would be an interesting series.
It would not be. The Celtics would lose that series in 5 games.
You're not high on them. I'm a little higher than you.
A little higher.
I get your point.
All right, one more trade before we get to the Celtics stuff, Sap. Kind of a shocking one out of nowhere, which are the most fun ones. The Wizards and Mavericks completed a trade. Kristaps Porzingis goes to Washington, D.C., and Spencer Dinwiddie and David Bertans go to Dallas. What were your thoughts about this one?
I like the move for Dallas, but Porzingis just never fit with Luka. Just didn't seem to work. And now you got Bertans, who's a really good 3-point shooter. You got Dinwiddie, who's just a really good all-around player. A guy who's going to do a lot of nice things for you.
I thought he was going to have an awesome year this year, and he's underperformed.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't Dinwiddie seem like the guy who just was at his best with Brooklyn? Like when he was in Brooklyn, everything was just flowing. And this happens in the NBA, right? You're in a culture, a system with certain teammates, and it just kind of builds from there. And then you go elsewhere and it just doesn't work. So maybe going to Dallas, where I think Luka's played better the last month and a half. It seems like he's getting closer to basketball shape. Still looks a little pudgy, but and Luka, I think, does have the ability to make guys around him better. So I think getting a shooter like Bertans and just a good all-around player like Dinwiddie was a good get, considering that Porzingis is not the most durable guy. And I just don't think he meshed well with Luka. So at that point, Luka's not going anywhere. You move the other player.
Yeah, I don't know what Porzingis' future is in the NBA, because, I mean, I think he's obviously going to keep playing. I don't think he's going to retire or anything, but I could see him just constantly trading teams all the time, because it's just like you can't rely on him to be a 1 or a 2. And so, he hasn't proven that he impacts winning at all. He's got such a unique skill set. Maybe it takes the right coach in the right situation to fully unlock it, but I could see him playing on like 5 or 6 more teams before his career is over, Sap.
Yeah, because he's frustrating, so teams will move on from him, but he's talented, so other teams will want to acquire him and think that they can fix him. Like, I could see him going to Toronto at some point, because I think Toronto is now the place where they can just take anyone and fit them into their system and make it work. I'm not saying they're the best team in the Eastern Conference, but it's such a well-run organization that at some point a player goes there and all of a sudden they kind of unlock the key and get them to play at their best. I'm not saying that's going to happen, next year or whatever, but I could see him at some point landing there and maybe having his best years ahead of it. But he's just that tantalizing player. You get frustrated with, so you want to move on from him, but you look at him and go, man, 7'3" with all that skill set. If we can just get him in the right situation, we can get the most out of him.
I'm hoping for the Mavericks' sake, this is not, just years and years and years of them trying to find a co-pilot for Luka, because he needs a second guy. I mean, he's great. I would love to see what he can do with a second star. Dinwiddie's not that. No. So, it's kind of like, when are they going to be able to get this guy some, quality teammates? Tim Hardaway Jr. is fine. Spencer Dinwiddie's fine. It's just at some point he's going to get frustrated, I would imagine.
Sure. Yeah, and eat more and get up to 280 pounds.
Yeah, maybe. Well, he can ask Zion about his diet. All right, the time you've been waiting for is here, Sap. The Celtics made 2 trades yesterday. They acquired Derek White from the Spurs. They also brought back Daniel Tice from the Rockets. To get Derek White, the Celtics gave up Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, a 2022 first-round pick, protected 1 through 14, and swap rights on a 2028 first-round pick. And for Daniel Tice, they gave up Dennis Schroeder, Enes Freedom, and Bruno Fernando, leaving their roster with like 6 active guys tonight. So they bring up some two-way guys, some guys from the G League. I obviously have a lot of thoughts on it, Sep, as I typically do with any Celtics transaction, minor or major. But before I go into a Celtics rant, I want to get your thoughts on the 2 trades.
Derek White, I think, is a nice addition, but he seems to have somewhat of a similar skill set to Marcus Smart. So is this like a move that leads you to believe that maybe they're going to move on from Marcus Smart in the offseason? Now, since Smart's come back from injury, he's played really well, been more of a facilitator than a scorer. So that's a big reason why they've put together this winning streak. So I like Derek White. I don't understand Daniel Tice. He hasn't played much this year. I believe he's only played 26 games, which is less than half the games Rockets played. He is what he is, right? 8 points, 5 rebounds, decent defender. His 3-point shooting is way down. I guess Jason Tatum likes him. Maybe that had something to do with it, because I think any moves that are made, you want to run by Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and see what they think about it. I think they did need some size, because you just don't want to spend 30, 32 minutes a game on Al Horford. You'd like to keep him around 24 minutes. You kind of want to keep Robert Williams III around that as well, because I don't think either one of those guys will perform at a high level when they're playing more than 30 minutes. So you want to add one more big to give you a little versatility there. But I think their biggest need was shooting, and they didn't address it, unless we're going to see Aaron Nesmith playing more, which he may have to, because, you gave up a lot of players to acquire 2.
Yeah, Nesmith and Pritchard should play more. They're arguably your two best, 3-point shooting options off the bench. Though we have not seen any consistency there. They're also bringing up Sam Hauser from the G League. That's sort of all he does is shoot threes. So all they're banking on in-house to solve their shooting problem, which I don't think is a good idea, because they haven't been a good shooting team to this point. Why is that suddenly going to change? I like Derek White as a player a lot. I think he's he's my type of player, Sap. He's a gritty defender, big effort guy. I think he's a good ball handler. He can get to the ball to the basket. He's a pretty good facilitator. You had a good comparison to Marcus Smart. I do think that they're very similar players. I have a problem with the compensation. I think they gave up way too much. If it was Richardson and Langford, okay. If it was Richardson and a first-round pick, okay. Richardson, Langford, a first-round pick, and the real kick in the nuts, Sap, and it's going to sound silly because it's so far, is that pick swap in 2028. Mm-hmm. You don't do that. You don't prognosticate 6 years in the future and think everything's going to be totally fine. That's what bad teams do, and bad management does. And they give up picks so far in the future and say, oh, well, this is somebody else's problem. We're kicking it down the road. There's no way this deal would have hinged on that,
right,
being included. And I think it was just a huge example of Brad Stevens being new to this job, naive at this job, and the Spurs having done this for a long time and taking complete advantage of a novice at this. And so, while I think Derek White is a good player and I think he will help the Celtics, I think that they paid an outrageous amount for just a good player. And the fact that now they're going to not have first round picks in 2 straight years. And, I was sort of bemoaning the fact that they didn't trade picks under Danny Ainge. Now they're trading too many picks because that's how you get, star players is you bundle a ton of picks and now they're giving them away. So I don't know, Steph. I don't see what the direction is. They got under the tax. I'm sure Wick Grousbeck's very happy about that. I think Derek White, again, is going to improve the team in the short term, but they're certainly not better than Milwaukee or Philadelphia or a healthy Brooklyn or Miami, in my opinion. So
I mean, are they better than Chicago? Everyone keeps telling me they're better than Chicago. I'm like, well, wait a second. Lonzo Ball will come back.
I think they're about even with Chicago, maybe a little worse. I don't think they're hands down better than Chicago.
No, I mean, let's take the two best players on each team, DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I mean, to me, that's kind of a wash. And I know people think Jason Tatum is a top 5 talent. Maybe he is. But DeMar DeRozan's playing like an MVP this year, and Zach LaVine is really good too.
Yeah, it's more or less a wash.
It's more or less a wash. And then if you want to look at the rest of the roster, Chicago, if Lonzo comes back, is pretty good. I think Vucevic is better than the big guys the Celtics have right now. I mean, at least he's durable. So, yeah, and I keep hearing that Cleveland's not as good. Well, Jared Allen's a damn good player. Could have made the All-Star team. You know what I think of Evan Mobley. He's the Rookie of the Year. You got Darius Garland. They add, Karis LeVert. So, I mean, they're in that group, right? But I don't want to hear that, they should beat all these teams because they're better. I don't think so. I think the East right now, if everything falls into place, we're going to look at the top 4 teams being Brooklyn, Philly, Milwaukee, Miami. I think we could kind of agree on that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the Eastern Conference semis. I mean, it could be a team that crashes the party like Atlanta did last year. But I think those are the 4 best teams. Then after that, there's 4 or 5 teams that are really bunched together. Yeah, I don't think they addressed their biggest need, which was outside shooting. Are you just hoping that, Jason Tatum shoots better in the final third of the season than he has in the first 2/3? And here's the other thing too, Jed. And I think Ime Udoka is such a defensive-oriented coach, which is great. And they play really good defense. But there's got to be times when you have to have a shooter out on the floor, whether it be Peyton Pritchard or Aaron Nesmith, and you give up a little defensively. Like, you can't just put 5 defenders out there all the time and just win that way.
No, right? I think that's all they want to do. That's all.
I mean, is this the closing lineup? Yeah, I mean, is this the closing line? You're going to see White, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and Robert Williams. That's a hell of a defensive team, but, Brown streaky, Tatum we know can score, but he hasn't been a great 3-point shooter. Smart and White aren't good 3-point shooters, and Rob Williams is best suited being near the basket. That's a hell of a defensive team, but you're going to have like fourth quarters where you get outscored 20-16 and lose because you can't put the freaking ball in the basket. There's times you have to have guys out there that can score. Like, I'll go back to the Bulls when they had Jordan and Pippen. I'm not comparing the Celtics to the Bulls, but you always had a Kerr or a Paxson out there who maybe weren't great defenders, but could shoot. Like, at some point, you got to put someone out there who can shoot the damn ball, and that could be Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Nesmith. By necessity, those guys are going to have to play more because the bench is much shorter. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. I really want to see Aaron Nesmith more and give him a chance. If he fails, put him back out there the next night. Give him another chance. Let's see if this kid can play rather than burying him if he misses his first 3 shots. No one can play in that situation.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I think that's sort of the growing pains of Udoka as a first-year head coach, too, is that he doesn't really know what to do in those situations. Oh, he's not playing well, I'm going to bench him. He's not going to see the court again for another 2 weeks. And I think he had a direct hand in working with Brad Stevens and bring in this Derek White trade. He coached him in San Antonio, and he coached him for Team USA. He knows him well. And I'm not knocking White. Again, I think he's a really good player. I think he's going to help the Celtics. I just don't see the direction for this team. And I see a hope that everybody's saying, oh, they're going to be the Pistons that won the championship. Because that's insane. Like, why would you think that? They're on a 6-game win streak. They've beat up on a bunch of crappy teams. Like, tonight will be an interesting game because they play Denver, who's a pretty good team. They got the reigning MVP, and then they're playing. They have Philadelphia coming up this weekend. I want to see them against quality teams. People are buying into this team because their defense has been really great and they've been blowing out these god awful teams. Well, let's see them play some good teams. And then we can say, okay, maybe, Derek White will be a huge factor for them in the playoffs or something like that. But I don't feel any different about the Celtics today than I did the other day, except for now they're out a couple first round picks.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the Patriots. They were 9-4, but you looked and said, well, they beat the Jets twice, and they beat Cleveland with half their roster out, and they beat Tennessee with half their roster out. And then later on in the year, they destroyed Jacksonville. But were those really impressive wins? No. And then when they finally played good teams like the Bills or the Colts, it didn't go well. And then when they played the Bills in the playoffs, it was even worse. So, yeah, I mean, this is maybe fool's gold because of the teams they're playing, and they're winning these games by 25 points. They lead the Eastern Conference in point differential, right? I mean, I think they're fourth in the NBA in point differential, which people throw at you. But I must remind people, this is not the Tour de France. If you win by 25 points on Friday, you start the next game at 0-0. That doesn't carry over. So,
right. The only reason is because they've been crushing these awful teams the past couple weeks.
What was the margin of victory over Sacramento a couple weeks ago? Was it like 58?
I believe at one point they were up by 70 at one point.
Okay,
in that
so
game.
that looks great. Over the course of a year, that's 1 point per game in just one game. So, sometimes we can get a little carried away with the point differential, which they're number one in the Eastern Conference. It doesn't mean they're the best team in the East. So, yeah, when they're good and they're pounding bad teams, it's impressive. Now, I'll give them credit. They're starting to beat those teams they lost to earlier. If they had taken
they're playing the best basketball all season that they have all season long. No doubt. Can't take that away from them. Because listen, when you play bad teams, you should crush them. So
and they weren't doing that earlier. They were losing.
No, they were losing
twice in Oklahoma City. So I like that. And I also like more balanced scoring. We're seeing, that we don't need to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown score 65 points combined for them to win. That they can both score in the low to mid 20s, and Marcus Smart has an efficient night, and Horford does a nice thing, and Robert Williams does a nice thing, and you're playing good defense, and next, you win the ball game. So, no, it's been impressive. But again, Denver, Philadelphia, want to see how they do, especially against teams that come at you with legitimate bigs, and Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. That's going to be impressive to see what they can do against those guys.
Yeah, my last thought on just the Tice part of it, Sap, is that Brad Stevens is just in love with him. He loves Tice. He played him over Rob Williams to the detriment of Rob Williams. Rob Williams is probably about a year and a half behind where he should be based off of Brad Stevens just insisting on playing Tice. So it's not surprising they wanted him back. Scalabrine called the trade a grand slam. I said I don't think he knows the terminology of baseball, because acquiring a player like Daniel Tice, who's not playing for the Rockets, who are the worst team in the league, arguably, he's not he'll play, a little bit. He's probably better overall fit than Enes Freedom, but I mean, a grand slam, he's not going to make a difference one way or the other. So I don't know how you could call that a grand slam. I almost would have rather just kept Schroeder for the year and let him walk.
I think
he's a better player.
Oh, he's definitely a better player, but I think they wanted to upgrade with Derek White and also get that type of gritty defender like you talked about. And I think, I'm telling you, Dennis Schroeder is got to be one of the biggest pains in the ass in the league. Everywhere he goes, they just can't wait to get rid of him. Right? He's obviously got some issues.
I think this was purely a contract. You think he was definitely a pain in the ass here?
You hear things that maybe the Tatum and Brown were like, all right, this guy's a little full of himself. He's going after Gary Washburn in an interview like an a-hole. I mean, Gary Washburn's a respected journalist who's just asking a good question. And Dennis Schroeder asked him, are you with us? Gary Washburn's like, well, I covered the team for the Globe. I'm not with you. I'm not like part of the organization. And look, he had troubles in LA. He had troubles in Atlanta, Oklahoma. I mean, he's got a lot of Rondo in him, except he's not Rondo. I mean, Rondo, you put up with some of the craziness because Rondo to me is a basketball genius. And, you put up with some of the foibles of Rajon Rondo because he's going to go to Hall of Fame and he's a two-time NBA champion. This guy's not. So who wants to put up with that? And I think they just wanted to move on. But yeah, Daniel Tice could not be a grand slam unless Scal's thinking of the grand slam at Denny's. That's the only thing I can think that was on his mind.
Yeah, I said maybe I would say maybe reaches first base on a pass ball third strike.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I would call it.
Yeah. Or reach on an error by the second baseman.
Right, reach on an error. Grand slam is
that's
not a grand slam. That was the Kevin Garnett trade. That was a grand slam.
Yes, very much a grand slam. Yeah, exactly. Anthony Davis to the Lakers won a title the first year. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Daniel Tice and Grand Slam shouldn't be in the same sentence.
No.
All right, Seth, before we get out of here, the Super Bowl is on Sunday, as everybody knows. So we would be remiss to not give our picks. We talk about football here all the time too anyways. So Sap, what is the spread as it stands today?
Right now, it's the Rams by 4 or 4.5 with a total of 48.5. The Rams technically are playing at home, although
yes,
I don't think the Rams ever play at home. The funny thing about this game, Jed, is there's been no buildup to it. Now, part of it's been because Tom Brady, retired, and then earlier this week kind of put out there that, never say never. So there's always the option that Brady comes back and Aaron Rodgers, where's he going to play? And then you get Brian Flores suing the league and 9 new coaches being hired. A lot of things going on.
New team name.
Yeah, new team name in Washington. Deflategate somehow got involved once again. Yep. Mike Florio's book is coming out talking about how the league really bought it. So there was a lot of things going on. And now you got the Cincinnati Bengals, who, by the way, are the 3rd most popular football team in their own state, behind Ohio State and the Cleveland Browns. And you've got the Rams. Now, you've been to L.A. I haven't. I'll make a case that these teams are more popular than the Rams in L.A. Just football teams. Forget the Lakers and Dodgers. Because in L.A., the Lakers and Dodgers are the 2 most popular teams by far.
Yes.
In terms of just football, Raiders are more popular in Southern California than the Rams. So are the 49ers. So are the Packers, Cowboys, and Steelers because of their national reach. I also think that USC is far more popular than the Rams. So I think the Rams could be the 7th most popular team in Southern California. Let's not forget they were in St. Louis for 20 years. Before that, they played in Anaheim. They didn't play in LA for the last 15 years that they were in LA years ago. From what I understand, and I was listening to Albert Breer today on TV saying that the only thing that you would know that the Rams were in the Super Bowl is, those buses that will have, like 88 Clarendon Hill, Leechmere, whatever, the little scroll at the top of the bus.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Some of the buses have the little saying "Go Rams." That's the only thing you would know.
They're into it, LA.
Yeah, so I mean, like the
putting
Rams
on the buses.
Yeah, I mean, is LA the only major city in this country where football's 3rd behind baseball and basketball? Right? I mean, I can't think of any other city that you would say that. Like New York, I mean, New York kind of covers everything because, the Yankees, the Knicks, the Giants, it's pretty much spread out all over the place. But for the most part,
when they were in St. Louis, where do you think the Cardinals have won in St. Louis, right?
Way bigger.
Yeah. What about the Blues?
The Blues are big. I mean, that's a sneaky.
So maybe St. Louis?
Yeah, St.
When they
Louis,
were there?
Cincinnati, the Reds are bigger than the Bengals. It's more of a baseball city. But the Rams, like I said, I really think that USC's bigger and all those NFL teams. The Cowboys have a bigger footprint in Southern California than the Rams. So do the Packers and so do the Steelers. You're right.
The Raiders are the most popular NFL team in Southern
far.
California.
Yeah. Absolutely. And second's probably the 49ers. Heck, we saw the NFC Championship game 2 weeks ago. The Rams had to go to a silent count at home because the 49er fans were drowning out the Rams fans. Like, who the hell's a Ram fan? Like, I don't even know who it is. I mean, they're like importing stars to come in and, it
used to be Christian Burgoyne, our old producer.
Yes.
When they had Jared Goff.
Jared Goff was the GOAT in training. Maybe Joe Burrow was the GOAT.
That's one of the worst sports predictions I've ever heard.
Yes.
Was when he was, man, is that not panned out?
That's not good. No, because about a year and a half later, Sean McVay was off from Jared Goff and brought in Matt Stafford. And you know what? The baby goat, as I have called him, #baby goat to me, not baby goat, baby Brady, is Joe Burrow. He's the closest thing I've seen to Tom Brady since Brady's been in the league. In terms of
he was the first overall pick.
First overall
pick was the 199th.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, they're very similar. Heisman Trophy winner, won a national championship at LSU. But the way they play the position is similar. Like, the
leader of men. That's what it is.
Oh, man. I mean, when did you ever see a quarterback carried off the field after winning a football game? That happened at Arrowhead Stadium 2 weeks ago.
He's the most confident quarterback I've seen since Tom Brady.
Without question. It's like nothing flusters this kid. I mean, he got sacked 9 times against Tennessee, got right up. Was down 21-3 at Arrowhead. No problem. We'll come back. He's baby Brady. So with all that being said, I like the Bengals in this game, 24-20. I trust Joe Burrow, a second-year quarterback, more than I do Matthew Stafford, someone who's in his 12th year.
Maybe it's because I'm rooting for them because I just think it's a cool story since Cincinnati's been so relevant. But I agree with you. I'm going to take the Bengals in this game as well. I think it's going to be slightly higher scoring. I'm going to say 30-27.
Yeah, that'd be a good game. Again, there's no buildup though.
My big concern, though, Sap, and maybe again, this is where logic should come into factor if you're picking it, is that the Bengals' offensive line is horrible, and the Rams have Aaron Donald. So
he might be like Bane out there, right?
So
Aaron
that could
Donald
be like
I
could also see. You remember what was the AFC Championship game when again? And Von Miller was in that game, and now he's in the Super Bowl, where they just got to Brady every single time.
Oh yeah,
Von Miller was just.
Yeah,
I can see it being like that too, where it's just a long game, and Donald and Miller are just in the backfield every single time.
Yeah, 2013 and 15, the Patriots lost to Peyton Manning and the Broncos in Denver in the AFC Championship game, and Brady in 2013 he was throwing to Matt Mulligan and Matt Slater and every other guy named Matt. There were no receivers. Everyone was hurt. Gronk was hurt, and Edelman was about his only weapon that day, and I think he might have been banged up going into the game. And then in 15, same type of scenario where Von Miller just blew up the game. I mean, just think of that Rams front line where you got Von Miller coming from the edge, Aaron Donald just playing anywhere on the line, Leonard Floyd. I mean, they're loaded. They're loaded up front. I think Sean McVay, if he wins this game, will make the case of being the best coach in the business. I'm not saying in the history of football or in terms of his career, but currently we're talking about a guy who in 5 years has gone to the playoffs 4 times, gone to 2 Super Bowls. If he wins it this year, he'll have that championship. I mean, he's done a lot.
Hell, he's got like 15 guys on his coaching tree already. He's my age.
His tree, he's 36. His tree is better than Belichick's tree. I mean, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay is part of his tree. Zach Taylor, who he's facing Sunday, is part of his tree. So yeah, I think that this is going to be an interesting game. Again, no buildup, and sometimes when there's no buildup, you get surprised. Like last year, there was incredible buildup, right? Mahomes, Brady, my lord, what's going to happen? And it was the stinker. Maybe this time around, it's going to be interesting. But that would be cool if the Bengals won. This is a team that hasn't been to the Super Bowl since 1988. You weren't even born the last time they were in the Super Bowl, and they kind of have a little bit of a feel of the 01 Patriots. Like
that's why I'm picking them. I'm going against logic. Like I said, logic would say the biggest matchup on differential on paper on paper is the O line against the D line.
Yep.
And that should be the huge advantage Rams. So typically that would mean the Rams would win, but they kind of feel like that team of destiny sort of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at the games they've won. They beat the Raiders by 7. They had a goal line stand to seal that. Walk-off field goal by Evan.
Their freaking kicker. Yeah. Like Vinatieri.
Awesome. It is. I mean, Burrow and McPherson look like, 20 years later version of Brady and Vinatieri. Like they're impervious to pressure. I mean, the kids hit 12 field goals on 12 attempts in the postseason. Cincinnati Jet has scored 72 points in the postseason. Their offense hasn't been that great, but good enough to win. 36 of those points have come on field goals, 36 on 5 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. So, they score as many points off of field goals as they do off of touchdowns. It just has that feel. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the Rams blow them out. If Aaron Donald just all of a sudden is just tossing people around, and as great as Burrow is, there's a strip sack that leads to a touchdown or whatever. But I like the Bengals in this game because this kid Burrow just has whatever it is that you want from your quarterback. He's got it.
Yeah. I'm excited for the game. I'm hoping it's just a good game. That's all I can hope for when the Patriots aren't involved, is that it's an entertaining game.
Yeah, who else isn't involved in it is the Packers, and they didn't make it.
They didn't even come close. They came as close as the Patriots. Didn't win a game.
No. They went around further because they got the bye. But do you realize?
I know, but that doesn't. It's same amount of wins.
I know. I'm trying. I think Burrow has more playoff wins than Rodgers has had the last 5 years. So that's kind of tough to take.
That's embarrassing. Yep.
It is. And also the fact that now Aaron Rodgers has won his 4th league MVP, which is the second most in league history behind only Peyton Manning with 5. So Rodgers has 4 MVPs since winning Super Bowl 45 11 years ago. He's won 4 league MVPs and 7 playoff games. Not good.
No, not good at all, Sap.
You
don't see me being upset about it.
My guy with it looked like he had extensions on the back of his head last night. at the award ceremony. I don't. Is he going to? I think he's building a house in Nashville. Is he going to become a country star? I don't know.
And Kyrie just should move in together, get it over with.
Oh, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Leave the planet. Yeah, that would be great.
Whether it's flat or not, we don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us, Sap. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
You too.
We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, and we're always presented by Full Press Coverage. And you can check out the show wherever podcasts are found. You can find the YouTube version if you're not watching there already, youtube.com/JetStryer. Make sure you check out our social medias too, at JohnSap25, JOHNSAP25, or at JetStryer. And we'll be back next week with a new podcast. See you, everybody.